You started with a dream, now you leading a team, working and closing them deals, working with purpose. You don't walk around with a purse, but you working and walking in heels. Beauty and brains, speaking and fighting for change, intellectual and clever. You show the ladies everything a man can do.
All right, hey guys, it is your host, Rashana Scott. Welcome back to the first ever Wealthy Kings Virtual Summit under Flippin and Heels. I am so excited to bring to you guys another one of my favorite kings who is really making moves in the industry, in his field, on social media, really killing it, blowing up, educating the culture. And this is actually a longtime friend. We actually have connected years ago in Chicago before he left me to, survive the winters by myself. But Mr. Carter Cofield, hey.
How you doing, Queen? So good to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I was super happy when I got that email. And yeah, it's crazy how far we've come. It's probably 5 years ago we first met. It's crazy how far we've come, but it shows that we've been leveling up each and every year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I remember Cofield being very intentional about like, hey, let's reach out, let's connect, let's sit down, let's have a lunch. And, we would always just, it was always good vibes. We would talk about like, hey, this is what I'm doing, what I'm working on. I believe I was still working at the time, working a full-time job and doing real estate, on the side and building a brand and trying to leverage it all and figure it out. And you were, working, your firm and doing all that good stuff. So before we get into all of that, definitely please introduce yourself. Tell the people who may not know you a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, my name is Carter Cofield. I am a CPA, and my specialty is teaching entrepreneurs how to live tax-free. I also have some other business ventures, and as well as my company called Melanin Money, which is we just teaching melanin people just like us how to become first generation millionaire. So I'm just excited to be in a place where I've made it out of the South Side of Chicago, and I can inspire other people and teach them how to do it as well. So that's me.
So let's definitely go deeper, right?
Okay.
So what was life like growing up?
So I grew up, like I said, on the South Side of Chicago. It was 9 of us in a 3-bedroom home. It's funny because I'm actually at my auntie's house right now, who basically raised us. And it was good and bad. As a kid, 9 of your siblings is lit in the house. You're having fun, you're sharing rooms, but you don't really know that you're in a impoverished, neighborhood or whatever. So for me, growing up I made the most of it. You don't know what you don't have because if everybody around you is broke, then it's like we all broke, what I'm saying? But then it got hard when my mom passed at 14 and then my dad passed at 16. So it happened back to back, basically when I was in high school. And up until that point, I won't say bad kid. I was hyperactive, right? So I got kicked out of a few schools just for being hyper and stuff like that. But when my dad passed, that's when life got serious for me, right? And I tell people all the time, life isn't about what happens to you. It's about how you respond to what happens to you, right? So usually when a kid loses both parents, they can make a left turn, why me, go into this dark hole, or they can make the right turn of okay, well, I'm now an adult at 16 years old. So for me, looking back on it, of course, I look at it as an advantage because I actually grew up 5 years earlier than most people. Most people don't grow up to 21, right? And then they start taking life seriously. I started taking life seriously at 16. I'm like, all right, I got to figure this out. So I put my head into books because I knew I was smart. And then I put myself through college, undergrad, master's degree. And since then, it's been no looking back.
Yeah. And you understood then, obviously, the importance of, like you said, just knowledge, education, the hustle, the grind, right? Like you said, figuring out. It's funny you said most people grow up at 21. Most people don't grow up to they're 40. But anyway,
I was trying to give them a break.
But so even in that, so like you said, putting yourself through school, it's because you were like, hey, I'm going to start a business, I'm gonna be a business owner. What was that? Because you were education is important, right? Knowledge is important and that whole thing. But even selecting the trajectory, right? Of okay, I'm going to go to school and I'm going to go to school for X and it's gonna look like X, right? How was that process?
That's actually a great question. I'm really glad you asked, because it's not the answer that most people would think is going to be, right? So I knew I was good at math because like my sister would make me do her math homework, and she was like 4 years older than me. So I knew I was really like good at it. She didn't make, I just, was smart, and I was like, I got it. And so I graduated 8th grade. What was the recession? I think it was 2009. Now, yeah, I was graduating college around, I'm graduating high school around the Great Recession, right? So 2008, 2009, I'm like, all right, what am I going to go to college for? Because I looked around me, everybody's losing their jobs, gas is $5 a gallon, nobody's working. So I like literally Googled what job has the lowest unemployment rate. And accountant was the #1 job that had the lowest unemployment rate. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna go to school for that, because I don't ever want to be in a position where I lose my job, right? Because I don't have no parents, right? There's no fallback plan. So for me, I actually took the safest route I possibly could based off of my situation and based off of the current economy. So that's what got me to say, all right, I'm gonna go to college. I'm a major in accounting. Fast forward, it ended up being one of the best business backgrounds that you could have. You know what I'm saying? But I didn't have that forward thinking entrepreneur mindset. Like I didn't want to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to work at an accounting firm, 40 years, retire, play it safe. And then, it's crazy how your environment shifts everything, because I had one entrepreneur friend and I hung out with him for like 2 months, and I couldn't unsee what I saw. I couldn't unsee the freedom. I couldn't unsee the confidence he had. I couldn't unsee the date, just the control that he had over his life. So all the 10 years of education and of building this straightforward plan was destroyed in 2-3 months, because I was like, I don't want to live like this no more. You know what I'm saying?
I love that. I love that story. I literally just said it yesterday. I, told it to somebody that how important exposure is, right? Because man, and I believe that we have a responsibility to expose the youth, expose other people, right? To the left and to the right of us. Like we have a responsibility to expose our community, our circle of influence, people who look up to us. We have a responsibility to expose them to just life being better, right? What things could be. And then, as adults, it's up to them to, take from that, what they will, right? And I'm sure you get it all the time, where people say like, hey, you inspire me, or like, I'm inspired by this and then that. But it's because they're exposed, you're exposing them, and you're seeing something that you had not seen before. And in that exposure, it lets you know what's even possible, right? I believe that we're so used to like just growing up, right, and watching TV and just feeling like, okay, like a certain lifestyle is so far-fetched, right? Because it's like me behind a box and it's them, and there's all these limitations. But when you see it's actually not that hard to really go after and live the life that you want, right? It's actually within reach. Something triggers, something changes, right? And you decide to go after that. So I love that you share that in regards to like that exposure. I'm curious to know what industry was your entrepreneur friend in? Well, like what was his business?
Yes, I'll give you the story in a second, but like I think it's so important. I wasn't gonna harp on what you just harped on. My mentor says this: you can't be what you can't see. So if you never get a chance to be exposed to something, you don't even know how to see it, right? So I think it's so important to get exposed as often and as early as you can, because once the mind is exposed to something greater, it'll drop something lesser, right? That goes for relationships, that goes for business, that goes for our lifestyle. Like you can't unsee somebody waking up and doing what they want to do every single day, right? You can't unsee that. So it just shows you that it's possible. So I think exposure is huge. I think it's our job as influencers in our respective spaces to continue showing, like, my content is like lifestyle content. Like, and I do that on purpose to show people like to live a life that they deserve to live. But to answer your question, it was actually 2 people. So one of my friends, his name is Jeff Badu. He actually had an accounting firm. He quit his job at an accounting firm and started his own and started making more than his salary in like 4 months. And I'm like, what is happening? The second story, this really made me quit. This is the day that I was like, it's over. So I live with my cousin, who is he's never had a job in his life. He's been a tattoo artist and a music artist. He's always had great money, right? He comes in my room roommates. He comes to the room at like 7 in the morning, asks me, hey, cuz, what day is it? And I'm like, you just left your room to come all the way to my room to ask me what day it was, bro. I'm like, bro, it's Saturday. I'm like, bro, it's Tuesday. And he's like, oh man, I thought it was Saturday. I'm like, bro, how don't you know what day of the week it is? Right? I'm fresh. I'm trying to get ready for work. Like, what are you bothering me for? And then he's like, oh man, well, I love what I do every day, so the days of the week don't really matter to me. And then he just like went back to his room, and I'm just like, as I'm getting dressed to go to a job I don't want to be at 7 o'clock in the morning. And it hit me like, yo, is it really a world where we can wake up, do what we want to do, live the way we want to live, and be successful and still be like monetarily sound? And again, after those two experiences, I had to get up out of there. I had to go. And I quit my job literally a week and a half later.
I love it. Cool. Good stuff. So quitting your job, starting your own business, what was that like? And I'm sorry, shout out to Jeff, who is also one of our
I want to guess
on this virtual summit. Yes,
look
yes. So definitely shout out to Jeff Badu. But so starting your own business, what was that like? You had a few entrepreneurs around you that you could, ask questions and, help you figure it out. So explain to us that process and even getting those like first couple of clients.
Oof, yeah. So, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it, right? Like starting out like was tougher than I expected, but I was still happier than I had ever been. Like, I didn't get my first client, I think, to like maybe 2.5 months into the business. But that's why I think mentors are so important, because one of my mentors was a very successful Harvard Business School grad who's like, yo, I had to get my first client for 4 months in. So if you get your first client before that, you're doing better than me when I started, right? So he helped give me perspective on like what this journey was going to be. But again, like when you're working for yourself and you're just grinding every day, there's no better feeling than getting money for somebody paying for you. They're not paying for your business. I mean, they're not paying for like the job, your employer. They're paying because they believe in you. And so even though money was slow at the beginning, every payment I took was just more confidence that people believe in me. Like I'm worth something to the marketplace. So it was a slow start, but like, again, I encourage people to read every day. I read 50 books a year my first 2 years of entrepreneurship, because I knew that like leaders are readers, and there's so much that I don't know, and like I can't go back to college to learn how to be an entrepreneur. You can't do that, right? You know what I'm saying? So I had to read every entrepreneur book I can get on. And there were times where I read a $20 book that made me $2,000 that day, right? So I realized like if I keep reading, I keep growing, I keep doing what I'm supposed to do, and making sure my circle is strong, then I can't lose. And then every year, business grew, and I became a more polished entrepreneur, and it's been just an uphill journey since then.
So I gotta ask, I need some of those books. Just ramble off a few, whichever the top ones that come to mind.
Okay. So The Go-Giver is huge, by Bob Burg. It's a book that shifted my perspective, also made me a decent amount of money. The 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss teaches us how to get out of our own way and get some of our time back, which is how I'm able to travel so much. And then Never Split the Difference is a book that made me, it made me $2,500 the next day after I finished reading it. And that's a book about negotiation and not splitting your price. But those are 3 good books I think every entrepreneur should read.
I love it. And then you talked about, like you said, being inspired to leave your job, and then, a week later you quit. Financially, where were you in a position? And because I don't want to skip over that, right? We talk about like,
so important.
Having this life and going after this lifestyle and, going after these things that we want. But, is it the rule of thumb? Like, oh, is it, you need 6 months of savings, you need a year, you need 18 months, you need 2 years, like, we talked about like the mental preparation, right? And the reasoning behind that. But I definitely don't want to jump over like the financial preparation.
That is so important. I knew you were a good interviewer. See, I knew it. Great questions. So that's so important, because I don't want to sugarcoat it and let people think like, oh, I just left and I hit the races, right? I was always a diligent saver because I didn't have any parents, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? And like for me, since college, my broke line was $5,000. If I had $5,000 in my account, I was broke. Anything less than that, like, you know what I'm saying? So I always had this emergency fund thing in the back of my head, because if I was broke, I ain't had nobody to call. You know what I'm saying? So when I quit, I was very strategic. So I had $14,000 cash saved, right? The reason it was 14,000, well, that's just how much I had at the time. But I also called all of my credit card companies the week before I quit and asked for an extension of all my credit lines, because I knew once I didn't have this job anymore, they weren't gonna extend me. So I made sure that I extend all my credit cards. So I had $14,000 saved, $40,000 in available credit, and I had a car rent. I had 2 cars on Turo. So my net, so I did the math. Once I quit, the difference between my monthly expenses and the money that was coming from my Turo side business was like $1,000 a month, right? So I knew I could survive 14 months at the, if I didn't do anything stupid with my money, right? So I did have a plan. I had $14,000 in cash, $40,000 in reserves, and a Turo business on the side, because I knew this. And this is what hanging around with Jeff taught me. Like, there's so many things to be thinking about when you're trying to run a business. Paying rent and like day-to-day expenses is not one of the things you need to be thinking about, right? Because it's impossible to have a long-term vision of a business if you have short-term financial problems. So I made sure that I had this cushion. So if I don't, barring I don't do anything stupid, if I don't make $1 for 14 months, at that point, I would need to go back and get another job. So I made sure I gave myself a cushion, because again, it's enough issues trying to start a business. Paying rent is not one of the things you want to play.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said something, you said your broke line. And the first time I heard someone speak to that, shout out to Drew, who is the founder of BYOB and all these.
Get out of here. How you know Drew?
Oh, me and Drew go back. Yeah.
I was gonna call him last week. That's crazy.
Yeah, tell Drew I said what's up.
Yeah, he does. His team handles this social media work for Melanin Money. And shout out to the Black Equity Conference. It's gonna be crazy.
Absolutely. So Drew is the first person that I saw say this, and he said, raise your level of broke, right? And he was like, at what level of broke? You say your broke line, was $5,000. So, at what level of, like you said, if I don't have X amount of dollars in my account, like I need to hustle, I need to figure it out, I need to do whatever I need to go and figure it out, because this is the minimum that I cannot go below. And I love that. And that has definitely stuck with me. It's something that, I reference from time to time when having conversations with people, like, where is your level of, that, right? Like, is it $5,000? Is it $10,000? Is it $500? Right? Like, you like, if I'm gonna be broke, but and you also had, like you said, that driving factor too. You like, look, I don't have anybody to fall back on. So this is why this needs to be my threshold, because I know at least here, I can survive, for a little bit. So I like that mindset and that concept, because it lets you know that, no matter how bad things get, like, that if your account hits here, you got to turn it up 10 notches.
Mm-hmm. Because like, you don't want to actually be broke and then you're like, okay, now I have to figure it out, right? You want to have that line of uncomfortability, like, yo, if it goes below here, I need to start hustling. Because granted, if it gets worse, like, now you out of luck for real. So I think that everybody should just consider that, right? Like, what's your broke line today? And every year that broke line should increase, right? Because, as you make more money, you just want to be more comfortability. You got more responsibilities. You might have staff to pay. Your broke line needs to be like up here at a certain level of success to give you that same peace of mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So I definitely want to talk about one of the things that you embody, and embrace on social media and different podcast interviews, when you're talking about your story and talking about your journey, and you talk about like turning your pain into profit, right? Mm-hmm. And going after, the things that you want to go after in life, going after, like you said, this lifestyle, because you have become a lifestyle influencer, right? I'm like, yo, are you even still doing taxes? Right? But, turning your pain into profit. But I also want to add another P, which is the pivot, right? And we'll talk about that as well. But let's start there.
Yeah. So again, I think life is about energy, right? And like pain is such a powerful emotion, right? And it can make you or it can break you. Like if you look at some of the most successful people, they went through a lot of pain early on. And so the difference between people that become successful, people that don't, is how you channel that pain, right? So for me, I think going through adversity, especially in your youth, is one of the, if you use it properly, it can be one of the best superpowers that you have, because you can leverage that properly and take off, because like, so like, for example, if you used to be broken, you used to like not eating, and you like, when it comes to like working hard, that's your drive. I'm not going back to that, right? I know how it feels to miss a meal. I know how it feels to watch my parents struggle. I know how it feels to wear the same clothes to school back to back days. That is always in the back of my head. So whenever I'm getting lazy, or I think I'm working too hard, or it's late, or I'm tired, I don't care about none of that. The thing that my drive is, I'm not going back to that. And I think that a lot of people who haven't been through a lot, they don't have that type of drive. It's like, oh well, I can always go back to mom. It's like, no, I think that everybody who goes through pain, whether it's a loss of parents, whether it's a struggle, whatever, use that as your fuel to take you to working that 14-hour day, that 16-hour day, or going back to back, or when you're scared to ask the client for the job. Like, think about what happens if you don't do it, right? So I think, it takes a lot of us who have went through pain. We have this internal fire of not wanting to go back to our old situation that we can leverage in every situation. You know what I'm saying? Like The Rock is a great example. He talks about this, about, all his companies are called, I forget what's it's called, 7 pounds, I think, $7 or something, because he remembers he had like literally $7 in his pocket when he got kicked out of the CFL, and that story is always playing in the back of his head. So I think that, again, if you have pain, why not use it to your benefit?
And if you don't have pain, what do you recommend, or what would you say that people need to tap into, um, to pull it out of them, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. That's a question I won't even pretend to have the answer for. I, I think is this: if you can't pull from your past, you have to be pulled by your why, right? Because the why is, when the why is stronger, the how is easier, right? So my why might be not going back to being broke, but somebody else's why can be impacting a million people, right? So whatever your why is, you need to be pulled by it. If you don't have any pain in the past.
Yeah, I love that. And then I believe, like, in that, I think it's just a matter of having direction, right? Like, not
Hmm.
being out here just throwing darts at the wall and seeing what sticks, and sometimes it might start like that too,
It might start like
but
that, right? But when you know what sticks, just stick with the thing that sticks.
exactly. So, having that direction, or even seeking that direction, and be intentional in finding that. And then, like you said, like holding on to the why you started in the first place, right? Because, we hear it all the time, right? You must learn to have discipline, right? Because you won't always be motivated, but you're disciplined by knowing exactly what, you're not going to go back to. Like, that's a discipline that you've conditioned your mind, like, that's not even an option. So we are disciplined to go the other way. That's the
Yeah,
discipline, right?
yeah.
Good stuff. So I definitely want to ask you, so, in starting your business, and getting those first couple of clients, and that whole thing, what are some early on, business lessons that you learned and that you can share? Because your business has definitely shifted, right, over the years. But I want to talk about that, having your accounting firm, and what that looked like young, as a millennial, like, all of that.
Yeah, yeah. I love this. These questions are next level. So I got two major ones. A major one I want to focus on early. This was like the probably just a 90% uh, factor of why my business grew so big so fast. Niching is so important. Like, there's riches in the niches, right? So here's the concept, right? When we start out as entrepreneurs, respectfully, right? we'll serve anybody that has a post, right? Because we need money. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you have a post, you're my client, you're my client, you're my client. Because we have this mindset of, if we, if we niche or have a, a kind of more specific client, look at all the people that we're turning down, right? But that's obviously a starting out conditioning mindset. But when you think about it, as you get a smarter entrepreneur, if your messaging is talking to everyone, you're really talking to no one, right? Because it's not resonating with them the right way. So I think having a mentor is just a hack for all success. My mentor told me, like, if you speak to a room and your pitch, or we talk about your bid, if you don't eliminate at least half the room, you're not niching hard. You're not niched enough. So every year he gave me an assignment. This was the scariest thing I did every single year. I lost sleep every December. Every December, he made me niche down my business further, right? So boom, all right, accounting firm for everybody. All right, boom, accounting firm for entrepreneurs. Boom, accounting firm for creative entrepreneurs. Boom, accounting firm for creative entrepreneurs in entertainment, right? So every year it niched down, and I had to let go of clients because they weren't in my niche anymore. But two powerful things happen when you niche. Number one, you get really defined messaging. So now when you speak about what you do, you attract the exact, imagine I serve, Black women who want to get in real estate and love dressing up, flipping heels, all that. And you're like, you speak it to my soul, right? Your client hears you and it's like, yo, you're my person, right? So that happens. Your messaging is real defined. So yes, you eliminate a lot of people, but the people that hear it, they saying where to sign. They ain't even asking about price. You know what I'm saying? So that's one thing that happens. The second thing that happens is when you become specialized, you now can charge specialized pricing. So the more specialized you become, people's issues before they even walk in the door, because I've seen this time and time and time again. So my fee went from a couple hundred to like minimum is 40,000 per person, because I know that person's issues before they even come in the door. And due to that, I'm able to solve their problem and show them that I can be their best benefactor.
You got me over here wanting to throw this pen at the computer, okay? Like, boy, shut up and keep talking. Like, so good. Man, so good. I didn't know what to expect, but I'm glad that I asked that question, because I feel like the listeners definitely need to hear that. I don't know, there's so many misconceptions about just so much these days. And, I still go to some networking events, not as many as I used to, when I was early starting out building my brand. Most events I'm hosting. But I remember having an event last year, and a woman stood up and she was talking about like being a jack of all trades, and she was like embracing it, right? And she was like, she didn't really see anything wrong with it. She was okay with it. And she was like, I know people say, that I should niche down and figure it out, but like I'm finding my way and all this and that. It's like, there's a part of that that's okay. But I believe there's a part of that is not okay. And so just the fact that you said that, it is so true, and it does resonate. It does resonate directly with people. Like you say, you attract your ideal client. And the other thing is the messaging. Like, I'm actually doing a social media training this Thursday with real estate agents, right? Very specific for who and the what. But even in that training, like I'm letting them know, you need to understand and know who your ideal client is, so you can know exactly who you're talking to and create content that speaks directly to them. One of the reasons why so many people are struggling on social media is because you don't even know who the hell you're talking to, right? Like, you just out here, just like you said, just throwing up on everybody, about whatever, and saying like, look at me, instead of attracting exactly who it is you want to, speak to. So I love the fact that was one of your business lessons. So thank you so much for sharing that.
No, and I think that's huge, because again, social media is such a big factor in growing your business nowadays. And like, yeah, if you don't know who your client, you don't know who you're talking to, you don't know how to create a post that's gonna perform well, because you don't even know what they want to see, hear, or learn about. So that's been my biggest success lesson. And I've done that in every business, and it just continues to work, and it continues to work. And it's one of those things that I think every entrepreneur needs to learn. And again, it's scary, right? It's scary. Like I lost sleep knowing I had to fire some clients or because they didn't fit my niche anymore. But every time I did it, my business just grew like immensely. And I'm just like, and then the dope part about it is you work less because when you keep doing the same thing over and over again, you can now build a system and automation around it. So now you're not like working, you're making more, working less, and serving people that you want to serve.
Come on, y'all better get these books, okay? 'Cause apparently, something is stuck, okay? A thing or two.
Oh, I said 100,
uh,
100 some books. I hope something sticks.
I know. So I do want to ask you just really quickly before we move on to the next question. Your mentor, you talk about a lot about a mentor, and I totally believe in mentors. And I feel like a question all the time is like, oh, where do I find a mentor? So where or how did you, find your mentor? What was that relationship
um,
like?
Yeah, so I have a few. I think you should have a mentor like every major aspect of your life, right? Like one person can't give you everything. So I was blessed with a few through like family relationships. But honestly, my best mentors recently have been people I paid. And it's not because they need the money, or it's not to say the people I didn't pay were not as good, but like when you pay attention, right? So my last mentor was $55,000, the most I've ever paid for anything, right? But because I paid him so much money, anything he says, I have to do because I gave up too much money to be playing games. You know what I'm saying? So I think one, you should pay your mentor, not because you want to have a relationship transaction, but that there's no transaction, there's no transformation, right? And secondly, how do you find them? I think you just find people who you want to be, doing what you want to do, where you want to end up. Reach out to them and hey, I love what you're doing. I would honestly lead out like, hey, do you have a paid mentorship program? Because one of two things will happen. They go say no, or they go create. They go say yes. If they have one, they go say no, and they go create one, right? So you might get in at a really low fee before they blow up. So again, I would just recommend reaching out to somebody you want to be and say, hey, do you have a paid mentorship program? I would love to pay you to be my mentor. Because for me, that shows you serious. You know how many DMs I get people asking me that, do I have a mentorship program? Like, I mean, yeah, but it's $20,000. They're like, oh, whatever, man. I'm like, okay, well, you're not that serious. And it's not a money thing. It's because I know if I don't charge you, you're not gonna do what I think I say to you, and now I'm gonna be like wasting my words and my time.
Mm, yeah, absolutely. Cool. So speaking of social media, we talked about like turning the pain into profit. And
Mm-hmm,
then I mentioned I want to talk about, another P, which is the pivot.
mm-hmm,
Because I have definitely been a witness to, how things have shifted for you, how you've pivoted, in the world of social media and how you're now leveraging your audience and your influence for a different kind of messaging, right? And I believe that it's obviously you're still in the accounting, finance, and business and tax write-off realm,
mm-hmm.
but it looks so much cooler now. So, so let's talk about that. The reason for that. We can even start there. Like, what inspired that pivot? And was it a decision that you were like, okay, this is what I'm going to focus on, or you kind of started and it like transitioned into this thing?
Yeah. So again, your circle is just so important, right? So I started hanging out with. I moved to LA, right? Obviously, and it's a lot of influencers in LA, right? In their respective fields. And one of the things that stuck out in every conversation that I had with them is that content is the most important thing in the world right now. Like content is currency. And the reason for that is it's not like making money or monetizing your audience. It's because, Rashana, when the last time you seen a TV commercial? Like honestly, like when the last
Well,
time you watched commercials?
I don't watch TV, so
Okay, right. As you shouldn't, right? Because you're a successful person. But like, so that point exactly. But you're on Instagram, right?
too much.
Exactly. Exactly. So all the billions and billions and billions of dollars that were going to TV commercials are now have to go somewhere else because people aren't watching TV. Right. So for me, it was I I saw how important it was to build a brand. One, to have influence, right? If you want to impact a lot of lives, you got to be seen by a lot of people. Therefore, you have to have a lot of influence, which is why you build your brand, right? So not only do I want to have a huge impact on everyone, because everybody can't afford to work with me one-on-one, but that does not mean they don't deserve the information, the intellect, the knowledge, the genius that I'm able to give. And two, I want to get this bag that all these brands are gonna put in other people's pockets, because if it's a company that I believe in, right? If a company that I use all the time, why not have them pay me to represent their brand or their company? So I learned that building your brand and content is so important. So I really put a lot of my time, energy, effort, and money into like creating content and building a brand, and it's fun.
Yeah. And I want to talk more specifically about the messaging of your content, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you talk a lot about write-offs and, all of that good stuff. So I guess like who are you talking to specifically in the content that you're creating?
So my avatar is young entrepreneurs who got into entrepreneurship to live the lifestyle that they want, right? So the dope thing about entrepreneurship is that you get to do what you love to do all the time. My thing is that one of the doper things about entrepreneurship is that the IRS will actually allow you to write off your lifestyle if you do it creatively in a smart way. So my messaging is teaching people like, taxes are going to be your number one expense if you don't pay attention. Two, now that you're an entrepreneur, the tax code is actually your friend, because we see through Jeff Bezos, through Elon Musk, every entrepreneur in the history of time, they always, for some reason, don't pay that much taxes. And that's because the tax code was made for us. It says, hey, if you're going to take the risk to be an entrepreneur, right, and you're going to like have to hire people and create jobs and do all this stuff that we no longer have to do, because the government, every job you create, that's the person we got to put on welfare, right? Because you do this, we're going to give you massive tax incentives. And one of the things I love to teach is that, like, you can get those tax incentives and still like live your best life. Like, if you travel, so I'm in Atlanta right now. I'm visiting my family. This would normally be a personal trip, but I'm going to a mastermind every day this week. So now I get to see my family also, but also I get to write off the whole trip because it has some business activity with it. So my messaging is simple. It's just learn how to leverage the IRS tax code to live your best life while running your best business.
I love it. So you said, the tax code was written for us. And I just like how that sounds, because I feel like
and you're in real estate, so like it's double written for you. Like, what I'm saying?
Facts. I just like how that sounds, because I feel like for so much of my early career of like just figuring it all out, it felt like it was always like, oh, like the tax code was written for them, right? And I felt like it was always a them, and not an us. But we have transitioned over into
it was of them, because you weren't a part of us. You were a part of
right.
the way, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
you're a W-2
Right.
worker. It's like it's for it's for them, but when you become an entrepreneur, it's for us. And one of the things I teach people is that you can't win the tax game if you're not on the right team. Get on the right team. Become an investor. Invest in real estate. If you don't want to be an entrepreneur, invest in real estate. If you want to get double, be an entrepreneur and invest in real estate, right? Then you really don't have to pay any tax. So it can be a us if you decide to get on the right team.
Yeah. So what are the biggest things that you see that entrepreneurs are definitely missing, when it comes to like write-offs and things like that?
What's the biggest? Jesus. The biggest is them not understanding that the moment you start a business, a good majority of your personal expenses are now business expenses, which makes them tax deductible. So the moment you start a business, your cell phone bill becomes tax deductible because you have to call your clients on that, right? The moment you start a business, your computer becomes tax deductible because you have to have Zoom calls, internet, your Apple Watch, meals, a part of your car if you use it for like the stuff that you're already paying for, fam. I'm not telling you to go buy anything new. I'm telling you the moment you shift from W-2 earner to entrepreneur, a good majority of things that you're already paying for become a tax deductible expense. And that's the easiest light bulb I want people to start like understanding.
Mm-hmm. And let's talk about like you said, in regards to the deductions and taking advantage of the deductions. The other thing is, once you start a business, you have to be making a certain amount of money. Like, do you recommend making a certain amount of money before taking before taking advantage of those write-offs before you zero, so you don't like zero out and show that you made no income? Or is it better to, be making some money, have some expenses, show some income, pay taxes on that? You get what I'm saying?
So it's all situation dependent, and that's a
Yeah.
great question, especially because I know you're in real estate, so I kind of know where your head's going. I think a little bit at this point, but
Yeah.
So first of all, the point of going into business is to make money. Let's not get it twisted, right? The point of going into business is to make a lot of money and live your best life. In addition to that, write-offs allow you to make the money but not pay taxes on all of it, right? And the thing I want people to know is I'm not telling you to go buy stuff that you don't need, but I'm telling you if you already going to need it and go use it, make sure you write it off in your business to lower your taxable income. Now, to answer your question, like, do I think everybody should be at zero or go into a loss? One, you can't go into a loss 3 out of 5 years, or the IRS will deem your business a hobby, and you don't want to do that. And I say if you can get it down to zero, that's cool. But like you have to be smart, because if you plan to try to get approved for loans and properties and stuff like that, I would say do all that in 1 year. Report higher income that year, get approved for all your loans, and then you can go back to like lowering it as close to zero as possible.
Cool. Good stuff. Well, I won't hold you for too much longer. This has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for all of the gems, all of the information. Of course, I could keep asking questions because you've been so easy to converse with, but man, I gotta just ask, just any final thoughts. I mean, you have so much going on. You have like this wealth of knowledge, and just, transitioning through life, right? The life of a hard knock life, right? Like where you're like, hey, I gotta make it or else, right? And you're like, I'm not going back to the or else, starting a business, understanding that, transitioning through that, moving across the country, and then, switching up business even more. So just throughout your journey, like what are some things that you would specifically share with, entrepreneurs, people that's either starting out or looking to transition or pivot or anything?
That's a great question. I'm trying to leave with a good lesson for your audience. So let me see. A few things. So number one is if you replace entertainment with education, your life will change forever, right? Period. And I'm not telling you to stop watching all TV, don't watch all NBA games, whatever. But like, try 1 hour a day. Replace one NBA game with one book. Replace 1 hour of music with one podcast, right? If you replace entertainment with education, your life will change, and you won't even realize it's happening. So that's number one. Number two is your circle and your environment shapes you more than you can ever imagine. So do not be the smartest person in your circle, because if you're the smartest person in your circle, you're not really in a circle. You're in a cage, because you can't grow. Nobody around you is pulling you to be better. If you're making 100,000, everybody around you making 50, nobody's pushing you to make 500 because nobody's doing that, right? So I would say, man, whatever you have to do to change your circle, to get around people that is high level, high minded, do it. And the third and final thing is get in the room, no matter how much it costs you. Getting in the room, being a fly on the wall in certain rooms can change your life forever. I'm investing every dollar I have in different masterminds, different mentorships to get in the room, whether that's a conference, whether that's a workshop, whatever, because you would be surprised at conversations that happen behind a $30,000 room. It would just blow your mind. And that goes back to exposure, right? The more you're exposed to, the more that you can see, the more that you can become, because the mind is such a powerful muscle, and all it takes is for you to get exposed and for it to expand, and you can't go back to your original way of thinking. So if a kid from the South Side of Chicago can become what I've become, anybody can do it.
Yeah, shout out to the South Side.
The South Side, love it.
In the building. So, man, where can people find you, follow you, support all that you have going on, take advantage of all of those amazing tips that you be giving out, dropping every day on your social media?
Yeah, I got you. So if you want to follow me, Instagram handle is Cofield_advisor. And if you want a free gift, because your audience is dope and I want to come bearing gifts, if you text the word text to 312-847-2309, again, text the word text to 312-847-2309. I'm gonna give you my free I'm gonna give you my tax saver guide, which is normally $147. I'm gonna give it to everybody for free. So they just text that number, they'll get the guide automatically sent to their phone.
Dope. You better still have a 312 number.
Of course. Hey, look, represent. I ain't never gonna forget where I came from.
Listen, hardly
Yeah.
home, but always repping.
Repping.
I
Thanks.
love it. Well, thank you so much. Again, this has been an amazing session. I appreciate all the gems that you gave. I appreciate the energy that you brought. But yes, this is another dope interview session on the Wealthy Kings Virtual Summit. Signing off.